Hello and welcome to today's episode of Dream Business, Dream Life. Today I'm joined by Helen Cummings. Helen is an experienced maternity nurse and baby sleep expert. She's what I call a real baby whisperer, someone I wish I'd known when my girls were little. And I am super excited to be chatting with Helen today. Hi Helen, how are you?
Hi Emma, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
My absolute pleasure. So, as ever, I'm going to dive straight into this, hand it straight over to you, Helen, to tell us who you are and why you started your business.
So I'm Helen, your baby sleep expert, and I started my business 18 years ago because I'm absolutely passionate about supporting new parents and their babies. I've had a lifelong love of babies ever since I was really young, and even went along to the local children's home and knocked on the door and asked if I could cuddle their babies.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Love that. I mean, there is something so special, isn't there, about babies?
Absolutely. I always say that they give me as much back as I give them. Just cuddling them, just everything. It's really magical.
Absolutely. So, when you first started your business, how did it feel? How did it feel going from, whatever you were doing before into suddenly you're self-employed, you're looking after yourself?
I was really excited. I was a nursery nurse before, so I'd been working in a childcare setting with really young babies, actually. So when I set up my business, I was really excited to get my first maternity nurse job, and that job was twins. And after that, it basically was referral after referral through the Twins Club in Edinburgh. And I was a twin specialist for the first and triplets for the first 5 years. But I loved it. I've got four children of my own, so it felt very natural for that to be an extension of my career. I always wanted to work with babies, even when I was, say very young. And yeah, it was my dream job.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So just tell us a little bit more for those who aren't familiar with what a maternity nurse is. Tell us a little bit more about what a maternity nurse does.
So, a maternity nurse is often booked when you're pregnant. A lot of people book you so that you're around for very soon after the baby's born. And I go into their home at night time. So, I might turn up, for example, at 9 o'clock at night and be there until 7 in the morning. And during that time, I care for the baby. If the mum is breastfeeding, then I will take the baby to her when the baby's needing fed. And then I'll just take the baby back off her and resettle the baby, and she can go back to sleep. If they're formula feeding or expressing breast milk, then I will have the baby all night and I will give the baby a bottle, giving them whatever milk the mum wants. And that way the mum switches off. She may get up to pump and go back to bed, but she doesn't have to do anything else. And when I leave in the morning, I leave them a detailed description of everything that's happened during the night, but also with a view to what that day would perhaps look like. So giving them an idea of a nice, gentle sort of sleep shaping routine so they can follow it. And I also have a WhatsApp service so they can keep in touch with me even if I'm not in at night time, and they can ask me questions about what's going on with the baby. So it's a great way to get support, especially if you've no family around. A lot of the people that I work for don't have any family. So it's great either way. It's good.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people who are going to be listening to this podcast are business owners. And I think, I've been there. I've, had babies when I've been working. And that thought of having to go back to work sometimes as early as 4 or 5 weeks after you've had the baby, the biggest fear is that you're not going to have had any sleep. So how would you help people in those situations? Because most people will say, oh, you need at least 3 months, before your baby's sleeping through. Would you agree with that?
Well, first of all, it depends what weight the baby is when the baby's born. So if your baby's quite low birth weight, it will take longer for your baby to sleep during the night because they've only got a tiny tummy. So again, each baby's an individual. It's hard to sort of say when a baby should or would be sleeping during the night because it's very personal to how that baby is and what weight they are. With regard to going back to work, I am actually working with a mum whose baby is 4 weeks old and she is back working at the moment from home. but juggling a 4-week-old baby. So we have started right from birth a very gentle routine so she can get an idea of when he will sleep, when he's due a feed, and it's working really well. You know, he's still on 3-hour feeds. He's quite a small baby, but she's getting better nights because the days are good and she's keeping an eye on how much sleep he's having, awake time, and feeds. So you can start really, with a newborn baby, which
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realise.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of mixed messaging out there, isn't there, for parents? I remember when I had my three girls, there's quite a gap between my girls in terms of, how many years I waited before next baby came along. Not necessarily planned to be that way, but that's life, isn't it, sometimes? And the rules, if the rules is the right word to say, that the health visitors and it's minimal, isn't it? Don't get me wrong, the support, it changed so much. It was like swaddle your baby, don't swaddle your baby, lie your baby on the front, don't lie your baby on the front, and give them don't give them cow's milk till the 6 months, give them cow's milk not before the 12 months. And it amazed me how these rules keep changing. And there's no rule book, is there? There's no, you don't have this baby and, you give birth to a rule book at the same time that says this is what you need to do. So I think as a parent, when you are pregnant, I think that's when it starts to kick in terms of what on earth am I going to do when I have this baby?
Yes, and I'm really passionate about supporting parents when they're pregnant and giving them some knowledge because when I do a pregnancy workshop, the parents transform in that period of time from the start of the workshop. You can see they're quite anxious and wondering what it's all going to be about. And by the end of it, when they've changed nappies, when we've spoken about, the moment they meet their baby, skin to skin, all the different benefits, that they then realise. And actually, one of the most important things is about sleeping, safe sleep, how to put your baby down to sleep, all the rules which are very important, the safety rules about caring for your baby. I show them the benefits of swaddling, but I also show them how to safely swaddle. It's there is a way to safely swaddle where the hips aren't restricted, and there's a lot of confusion about swaddling. Because years ago people used to do it too tight, and then there was a big sort of reaction and saying stop swaddling. But actually, swaddling is really when your baby's first born, the first few weeks, they have a startle reflex and that can wake them from a sleep. So swallowing really is for the top part. The most important part is this part. So when they're sleeping, they're not jumping and waking up and they feel like they're getting a hug rather than being totally wrapped up really, really tight. So things like that, just giving them knowledge, I think they then feel confident to meet their baby once they've been prepared with some sort of knowledge, that really helps them. So I think in pregnancy, if you can get knowledge, it'll prepare you for the moment that you meet your baby.
Yeah, yeah, completely. And you're writing a book, aren't you, at the moment, Helen, that is going to help
I
people with all
am.
of this stuff. You want to tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so the book will be coming out next year and it is going to be for mainly for first time parents, but possibly for second time parents who maybe in with their first time they maybe found it quite difficult or they didn't look at any sort of sleep shaping. And it will be preparing baby parents to meet their babies and give them sleep really in the first trimester, which at the moment they're being told it's not possible to have a baby sleeping well within the first 3 months. And that is not the case. It's what I do is not strict. It's very gentle. It's hands on. Absolutely no tears approach. Lots of cuddles. But it's just about having the good balance of your baby's day. It's really important. So I'm going to be explaining how to do that.
Excited. And when is this coming out?
It should be out just before Mother's Day next year.
Excited, excited. And I think it's the thing that is missing, isn't it, in this world? It's my children are all grown up, as you know, so it's things have changed drastically since then. But I mean, I don't, do they still do the bounty packs? Do they still do the bounty packs?
We've got boxes in Scotland. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't. I've got a feeling they've stopped them here in England. I haven't seen them, but you used to get the box, and that was basically that was it. You go and pick up your box at so many weeks pregnant, again at another so many weeks pregnant, and then so much after birth, and it was like that
Mm.
was the only thing that gave you a bit of information about what was going on. Um, but I think we forget that having a baby starts during pregnancy, doesn't it? A lot of people are not preparing themselves for what is to come. They're just worrying, they're just worrying about what is to come, but wanting to enjoy it because it's what they want to have this lovely little baby. So there needs to be
It's,
more, doesn't there, to help people at that.
yeah, definitely. And I think when you fall pregnant, apart from people saying congratulations, usually it's followed on by, oh, well, make sure you get some sleep because you're not going to get any sleep or your sleep's going to stop. So they immediately give you that fear. Oh, how am I going to cope without sleep? And of course, you're going to have periods of not getting a lot of sleep when your baby's first born. But there is ways of finding a balance, even if it is knowing when your baby's going to have a sleep in the afternoon and you then go and have a nap, and other things as well. I talk to parents about visitors coming, just protecting your space, being clever about when you have people around and all the things that people worry about are maybe they don't want to upset, family members, but it is important in pregnancy to think about these things because once the baby's here, it literally just happens. And sometimes new parents can feel it's all got a bit out of control. So when they're planning their birth plan, I also suggest that they actually think about what they're going to do, who's going to visit. Is it only going to be grandparents for the first couple of weeks? How are you going to manage it? Because you're much clearer minded when you're pregnant than when you've just had a baby. It can all be quite overwhelming. So it's just really been able to talk them through all the things they might not even have thought about.
Yeah, and you
So
don't know what you don't know, do you? That's the
exactly.
key thing, isn't it? If you were launching a business, you don't know what you're doing to launch a business. So you learn, don't you? Go and find that information out. You listen to other people, you take advice, you learn as you go in. But with a baby, it literally happens in that moment, doesn't it? You go from pregnant parent to parent of a child that is completely reliant on you. And you touched on something there that I think is really important to note, isn't it? That it's okay to enforce your boundaries.
Yes, definitely. It's really important. And I think years ago when I had my daughter, that wasn't, people came to visit, and sometimes you had visitors every day. And you would never have, it would have appeared to be rude to say, look, we're not having visitors. But I think the younger generation now are much better at protecting their space. And I think that's really important, just to get used to being a little unit themselves. It's important. I'm not saying don't see grandparents or everybody has their own choice. But sometimes it's just too overwhelming and they just want a wee bit of space. So I think that's really useful as
Yeah.
well, just to have support. I also do support online, which some people find that more useful because they don't necessarily want somebody in their house, but they do want the support. So, we can start working together from the time the baby's born anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to meet the baby, but basically we just work away right from the beginning. And it's just a bit like having me in their pocket that they can just, any questions, because, you can go on the internet, but the internet is not talking about your actual baby, and that's the thing that makes all the difference when you're actually looking at that baby's weight, health. Does the baby have reflux? Is the baby feeding well? You can't put into Google all these things and they'll come up with a plan for your actual baby. And I think that's really important to have that sort of one-to-one support because it's not easy nowadays to get that kind of support. Just in Scotland, the health visitors are not out as much as they were when I was a young mum. I think they came every week for the first month when
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
daughter was
I
born.
remember the doctor came out to you after you'd had your baby. I remember when I had Becky, the doctor comes, literally to visit your home. I mean, get a doctor to your house now. It's an impossible thing to do, isn't it? Get an appointment's hard enough. But I suppose that's just how the world has changed, isn't it? I think there's an awareness piece, isn't there, around people actually knowing that, there is support beyond Google. we're all very reliant on, if we're stuck with something, we Google it. We must be a doctor's worst nightmare when we walk into the surgery and we've already diagnosed ourselves and everything else because we put some generic symptoms into Google. So I think, for people to know that when they are pregnant, that they're not alone, that there is some support out there that they can call on, be that, like you say, remote services or the full, Monty, in terms of being in their homes with them and doing the do with them alongside them. I think it's important for people to know that exists and the benefits that brings. I would have loved that sort of support when mine were little.
Yeah,
I completely
it's
fell into that trap of just let the baby do whatever it wants to do, and I'll just run around like a headless chicken and fill the gaps.
yeah. It's also, I think it also helps with postnatal depression. If you have support, that can really help a parent. They feel that they've got your confidence, they've got your expertise, and it can help, them go through the journey of postnatal depression and come out the other side. So I have worked with many, many parents with postnatal depression over the years. And sometimes it's been grandparents that have paid for me because they've not been able to get there, and I've gone in and helped. And it's a real privilege. And, it's lovely to see the parents come out the other side with, feeling happier, feeling better, baby's more contented, everybody's happy. And these are people that still keep in touch now after many, many years, because it is such a special part. You're going into them at such a vulnerable part of their life, time of their life. So it is really special.
You
I
become the
feel
part of a lot of families, don't you? That's, you become a really integral part of people's homes and families for however long that it is that they need you. And that, as you say, is a really, really special moment, isn't it? But I think what I absolutely love here is you give people the option, or the opportunity is probably the right word, not option, the opportunity to enjoy their pregnancy and also those early months of having a baby. Because I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, it's very stressful, it's tiring. And what you remember is those moments, oh, baby doesn't sleep. So what do you say to somebody when they have a baby? Oh, get ready for no sleep because your baby doesn't sleep. So it's almost like you are giving them that opportunity to have memories that aren't just lack of sleep, that aren't just I didn't know what to do when it's what would Helen do? I know that's a phrase that we've used before. You would have
exactly.
somebody to be able to say, well, what would Helen do if this was happening? What would Helen do? And that must be heartwarming for people to know that they've got that option.
Yes, it is. I mean, there's many times they've said, if they, maybe it's been a weekend and I've not been around, and they've said that's exactly what the thought is, right? What would Helen do? Let's stop, let's think. And they always have I always make like a little plan for the baby, and then we tweak it as the baby gets bigger and things change. Then, every week or two, I just change it so that we're always moving forward. And I think that's really important. But in pregnancy, I think a lot of people are working now right up until they have their baby, and they literally have no time to rest or, prepare. So it is hard, even going to late classes at night time when you finish a day at work. So I think sometimes that's where online is useful, because online can be, any Saturday morning, or it can be, you don't have to be going out at night to do a 3-hour workshop if you've got somebody that you can actually speak to during pregnancy. I also support mothers through a rainbow pregnancy. If they've had a loss previously, then I can support people through that. My own experiences, I had 2 miscarriages before I had my first daughter. So I do understand. I've been through that situation, albeit wasn't late pregnancy, but it was still a loss. So I understand the anxiety of being pregnant after a loss. I remember it very clearly, worrying, especially for the first sort of up to about 16 weeks, until I felt like my pregnancy was really established. So that's another area where I think there's not enough support for people, going through their rainbow pregnancy, because it is very stressful.
it's a whole heap of new fears, isn't it, that are going through your head constantly, as long on top of all of the normal things that you have, being a pregnant mother. It is huge, isn't it? So what I normally do at the end of every episode is ask guests to share with us one of the top tips. And what I think would be lovely, Helen, just thinking of the people who listen to this podcast, or the majority of people, as I say, are business owners. So can we, if you don't mind, of course, can we be personalised a little bit of this and say, okay, so if you were a business owner right now who is pregnant and going to have a baby, what would your advice be to them? Because I guarantee they are already starting to think about the how am I going to cope with my business once I've had this baby. So they're pregnant. What would your top tips be for them right now?
My top tips would be to get the knowledge when you're pregnant of what there is around to support you, and find something that can support you, whether it's somebody that does what I do, that offers one-to-one support from the minute your baby's born, or whether it's finding a book that will help you, that you can keep in your changing bag. I would definitely start thinking ahead and taking from what was said today the actual confidence that you can have a baby that sleeps well, even in the first 3 months of your baby being born. It just takes a little bit of finding some resources, somebody that can support you and work with you. And it's can be done really, really gently. It's not about putting your baby on a strict routine. Mums that best breastfeed, combi feed, anything, it doesn't matter. You can still have your baby sleeping well. It's just finding somebody that can help you with it, or a book that can help you with it. I think that would be my tip, is think about it in pregnancy. Because once your baby's here, life just happens. And before you know it, you're trying to work. You might possibly leave your baby to sleep for too long because you're trying to do a bit of work on the laptop. But that could be during the day. And then unfortunately, you may have a really bad night because the baby's turned, day into night. So it's trying to get a balance for both of you, a balance that will work for the baby, but a balance that will also work, because you can't go back to work at 4 or 5 weeks, 8 weeks, and function unless you're getting some sort of sleep. So I think looking ahead and making some plans is definitely what I would recommend.
Yeah, which is exactly what you do in your business normally, isn't it? So it's about doing that exact same thing, isn't it, with your pregnancy and with your baby. So finally, Helen, if any of our listeners want to come and learn more about you, follow you for more tips and advice around, helping them through pregnancy and, having their baby, where's the best place for them to come and connect with you?
I'm on Instagram, Your Baby Sleep Expert, and I'm also on LinkedIn as well. Helen Cummings, Your Baby Sleep Expert.
Amazing. So thank you so much for joining me today, Helen. It has been amazing chatting with you. And thank you, everybody else, for listening. We will see you next time.